So, what is England? This is for students who haven't done one two. Just want to make sure that you guys have a clear understanding about the basics of the subject and you're not like sort of missing out or having gaps in your knowledge. So, England, the main difference between England and mainstream or literature or like year 10 English is the fact that you're analyzing language itself. So, like instead of analyzing like themes or characters, you're analyzing the use of language in the real world. So as you know, in England, there's three sections. So we have sections A and B, which is SAQ and AC, and section C, which is an essay. Now, in sections A and B, you're given a text by Vika. Now, this can be any text. It can be written, spoken, formal, informal. So, for example, it could be a conversation between friends. It could be a legal document. It could be a political speech. Literally anything. And Vika's going to ask you to unpack that text and either write an AC on it or answer a bunch of questions about that text and what language does in that text. So that's what I mean when I say you're analyzing language itself rather than like essay, like characters in an essay. So characters in a book or themes in like some sort of novel written by an author. So that's the main difference there. Here are some examples of what I mean when I say analyzing language itself. So, for example, a politician might use doublespeak to hide or obfuscate certain things. So, does anyone know what doublespeak is? So, has anyone read George Orwell's 1984 by any chance? Okay, so no worries at all. So, doublespeak is basically language that is intended, language that is used to manipulate or obfuscate, or conceal, or hide certain things. So a politician might use language that intentionally misleads the public, and that can be used to do a variety of things, such as, for example, hiding their party shortcomings, like obfuscating like national issues and making their party seem more proactive, even though they're really not. So doublespeak's a classic example of public language, language that's used in public domain. And something you might analyze in England, especially for Unit 3, Area Study 2. Now, an advertisement might use imperatives to compel the audience to buy that product. So imperatives is one of the four sentence types. We have declaratives, interrogatives, exclamatives, imperatives. Imperatives, they start with a verb. So for example, buy this product. And it's getting you to like do something. That's what an imperative is, and it's used commonly in advertisements. Teacher in a classroom, they might use non-discriminatory language or politically correct language, and that can be used to avoid alienating certain students. So using gender neutral pronouns, for example, instead of gendered alternatives, such as like he, her, etc., that could be used to like avoid like discriminating against certain students or certain groups. And that's an example of non-discriminatory language or politically correct language. So yeah, this is what I mean when I say you're analyzing language itself instead of like your characters or themes or arguments like you would in English mainstream. And yeah, I think it's way better than analyzing novels, in my opinion. Now, even though Lang is really fun, there's a bit of a harsh truth that I want you guys to know about. And the thing is, many students, they walk into year 12 feeling confident. They feel like they're going to get like a really high score. But the thing is, doesn't always happen. Even though some students, they walk in feeling really confident, they actually end up like not doing that well in England 3, 4, even though they did well in England 1, 2. And one of the reasons for that is because they work hard without knowing the right techniques or the right strategies. So England is a subject where you can put in hours of work every single day, but still not improve if you're not using the right strategies or the right techniques. So it's very important for you to learn from someone who's actually topped the state and scored really high in order to actually like improve. Because if you use techniques that are not that efficient or not that effective when it comes to scoring high, regardless of how hard you work, you're not gonna like get much, right? So, for example, like to give you an analogy, if you're trying to like dig a hole in the ground and use a spoon, it's gonna take a really long time. But if you use like a shovel or like an excavator instead, it's gonna be done in like a fraction of the time. So use the right techniques, and that's going to really help you do well in Lang. So some students might like work 5 hours uh, in a week for Lang, and they'll get more done. They'll get higher scores compared to students who work like 10, 15 hours for Lang. So yeah, make sure you use the right techniques, and that's something that's like that lets a lot of students down. Another thing is that Ying Lang relies on skill, not just memory. So some students think that, okay, if I memorize the male language, if I memorize my examples, I'm going to do well in the essay or the AC or SAQ. But Ying Lang, it doesn't just rely on memory. People think that if you just memorize male language or if you just like memorize your examples and how to like elaborate on the examples, you're going to get really high. It doesn't always work that way. So you need to learn like how to actually analyze well. It's all about developing skills. So it takes time, it takes consistent effort to actually get to that 45 plus or 50 study score. So you need to train your brain to think like an assessor, to think like a top scoring student, and really develop the skills required to get to that level. And the earlier you learn those skills, the better you get, pretty much. Now, yeah, one more thing that I want to add here is number three. Uh, like 90% of the units 1, 2 content is actually irrelevant for units 3, 4. So only like a 10% of the units 1, 2 content actually transfers and carries over into year 12, units 3, 4. Most of it, like for example, CLA, like child language acquisition, history of English, like all the like the entire timeline, and other things such as like pigeons, creoles, none of that actually is relevant for units 3, 4. So that means that even if you know the content really well for 1, 2, it won't actually be useful for 3, 4. So that's one of the reasons why people might feel really confident for 3, 4, but they like don't always do that well. So yeah, my goal as a tutor is to help you overcome all of these and ultimately help you get that really high study score. Do you have any questions so far about anything, by the way? That all good? Perfect. All right, so let's move on to the actual content. Now, we are starting with the basics, just in case you haven't done 1, 2, or in case you're not too strong with the foundations for units 1, 2. But I just want to go through some basics, just so we're leaving no stone unturned for our preparation. So starting off, for English language, there's two fundamental things they need to know. There's two fundamental concepts that underpin the entire subject. And those are male language and SLVs, or social linguistic variables, aka SLVs. Now, the thing is, if you get really, really good at both of these, you're pretty much unstoppable for this subject. And that's my goal for the end of this lesson. Like by the end of this lesson, I want you guys to feel really confident when it comes to male language and SLVs. Now, in terms of male language, we'll learn it in subsequent lessons. So in the next few lessons, we'll actually go in depth into like each of the male language terms and the subsystems. But just for now, I want you to know that these are two really important concepts for Lang that underpin all three sections. So they underpin SAQ, AC, and SA. So regardless of the section, these two fundamental concepts are going to come in very, very handy. Now, let's start with the first one, meta language. So what even is meta language? Now, it is a pretty basic question, but do you want to just tell us, like, can someone just tell us what's the basic definition for what meta language is? Okay, before we start, actually, what does the prefix meta imply? What does the prefix meta mean? Like, what does meta actually mean? Yeah, about itself. Yeah, it means it's self-referential. So it's referring to itself. So what is meta language? It's language that refers to itself. It's self-referential language, aka language that describes language. So language that describes language. That's the basic definition for male language. Why is it important in lang? Well, basically, whenever you're analyzing example in lang, whether that's SAQ, AC, or essay, every elaboration, every analysis starts with male language. Every single one, without exception. So every time you analyze something in lang, every elaboration that you write must always start with male language. So regardless of what it is. And if you miss out on male language, examiners like to take off marks. So yeah, that's a common reason for students not doing that well. It's because they don't actually use male language. Now, quick revision. But the six substances of male language. Let's go through each one and sort of actively recall what they're each about. So, start with the semantics. What does semantics actually mean? Can someone tell me? It's a study of what? What's the substance about? Yeah, meaning, exactly. The semantics is a study of meaning. So, can someone give me some examples of male language terms that might fall under semantics? Think about meaning. So, think about like figurative language, for example. Yeah, so you can analyze connotations. So, certain words or phrases might convey your specific connotations, and that's part of meaning. That's part of semantics. What else do we have? So, we have figurative language. What's an example of figurative language? Yeah, metaphor. Yeah. What else do we have? What's the thing out like it's very similar to metaphor, but it has like or as? Yeah, simile. Yeah. Yeah, hyperbole as well for sure. So hyperbole is basically where you have a exaggeration about something. So for example, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. That's not hyperbole. What do you call it when you give human-like qualities to something that's inanimate? Yeah, personification. Yeah. Obviously, there's many more examples, but hopefully that gives you an idea as to what semantics is. So it's the study of meaning. And yeah, by the way, for each of these subsystems, we'll go into them in a lot of detail in subsequent lessons, the next few lessons, just so you're like all like up to date with the male language. Now, what about lexicology? What's lexicology about? So what's a lexeme? Does anyone know what a lexeme is? Lexeme is another word for something. I'll give you a hint. Lexeme is a lexeme. Yeah, word. Yeah. So lexeme basically just means word. So lexicology is the study of words. So can you guys give me some examples of male language terms or types of words? Yeah, so you can have neologisms for sure. What else do we have? Hypernyms. That's more of a semantics thing. It blends. Yeah. What else? Yeah. Okay. Affixation. That's more so morphology. But we'll go into that soon. Yeah, slang. Yeah. What's like the professional version of slang? What do we call that? Yeah, jargon. Yeah. You can say colloquialisms as well. Yeah. Yeah, even like word classes. So what are some examples of word classes? Yeah, adjective, noun, yep. Adverbs, yeah, verbs, and this goes on. Prepositions, etc. So yeah, those are some examples of male language terms that fall under the idea of the subsystem of lexicology, the study of words. Now let's move on to syntax. So what's syntax? What does syntax actually refer to? Yeah, the structure. So it's more so about how words are like put together. So sentences or how words are put together. Yeah, perfect. So what are some examples of male language terms might analyze here for syntax? So you can analyze sentence types. Yeah, what are some examples of sentence types? Declaratives, yep. Interrogatives, imperatives, exclamative, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sentence structures as well. So you can also analyze sentence structures for syntax. What are some types of sentence structures? Yeah, sentence fragments. We have, simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences. Yeah, exactly. What do you call it when you repeat a similar structure many times? It's called syntactic patterning. Yeah, and what are the three types of syntactic patterning? Parallelism. Yeah. What's the version of parallelism with contrast? Yeah, antithesis. Yeah. And what's another example? Listing. Yeah. So hopefully that gives you an idea about like what syntax is. So it's all about sentences or how words are oriented, how they're put together. Now, morphology. Does anyone know what a morpheme is? Morpheme. So a morpheme is the smallest unit of something. Not a word. I mean, technically, yes. A smaller unit of meaning. So a morpheme is the smallest like way to describe a meaning. For example, you can have prefixes. You can have oops, sorry. You can have prefixes, suffixes, infixes. So prefix goes before a word. So for example, meta here is a prefix in meta language. Suffix is something that goes after a word. So, for example, the S here is a suffix that indicates plurality or the fact that there's multiple. So, yeah, blends is an example of a plural noun where you have a suffix S. Infixes is basically where you put an affix or you put a morpheme inside a word, like in the middle of a word. So you sort of insert it in the middle of a word. So, for example, like fan, fantastic. That's an example of infixation. With bloody here, this morpheme bloody, the smallest unit of meaning here, is like inserted in the middle of a word. Now you can also have things like, free morphemes, bound morphemes. So free morphemes are morphemes or units of meaning that can stand by themselves. For example, bloody here, so free morpheme. Uh, like bound morphemes are morphemes that need to be bound to another word or another morpheme in order to make sense. So the S here in blends, like I was referring to earlier, this is a bound morpheme because S by itself doesn't make sense. And yeah, there's many different male language terms that fall under morphology. But yeah, we'll go into that in a lot of detail very soon in future lessons. Now, what about discourse? What exactly is discourse? So you have two types of discourse. What are they? So we have written discourse and yeah, spoken discourse. Exactly. Yeah. So there's different male language terms. There's different types of features that characteristic of written text and spoken text. So there's a group of features they can find like exclusively in spoken text. And there's another group that you can find exclusively in written text. And we call those discourse features. So when it comes to written discourse, what do you analyze for written discourse? What are the two like key concepts you analyze when it comes to written discourse? Yeah, coherence and cohesion. Yeah, the two C's. So coherence is about how I can understand the text. Cohesion is about how well the text flows. Spoken discourse, there's a lot of stuff that falls under spoken discourse. So you can have things like conversational strategies, non-fluency features, prosodics, there's a lot of stuff. So yeah, we'll go into that soon. But yeah, basically it's just features that characteristic of written or spoken text. Now, phonology. What is phonology? Think about the root word here, the root phon. Phon means what? Yeah, sound. Yeah. So phonology is the study of sound uh, in speech. And it's something that you only see in written text. So only in spoken text. So you don't have phonology in written text unless you're trying to like intentionally replicate the phonology of spoken text, which is you'll find that in some text. But phonological features, such as, for example, emphatic stress, intonation, uh, assimilation, those are only found in spoken text, and it's something that you can analyze for spoken text. So study of sounds, basically. Now we have a very good question. So let me just paste it here. So the question is, morphemes are the smallest units of meaning. So why would something like s, or the plural suffix s, be considered a bound morpheme? So firstly, it is a bound morpheme because of the fact that it can't stand by itself, but it's a morpheme because it is in itself a unit of meaning. Because the S here, even though by itself it doesn't really like indicate anything, if it's bound to another word, It indicates plurality, and that is a form of meaning. So the fact that something is plural, the fact that you have multiple of something means like it in itself is a form of meaning. So that's why the suffix s is an example of a morpheme. So it technically is a unit of meaning. Does that sort of answer your question? Yep. All right. Let's move on to something else. And that's this analogy that I have for you guys. So in case you're struggling with like the overall idea of like how male language like fits into the big picture, there's an analogy that I have for you. So it's called the onion analogy. Now, if you have an onion, there's concentric rings. Like when you cut it, you'll see that there's concentric rings in the onion. So you have this middle ring and then another ring outside that, and then it keeps going outward. The rings keep getting bigger. The same concept can be applied to male language. So there's four substances that are relevant here. You have morphology, lexicology, syntax, and discourse. So these four subsystems, they can be organized in a way that's similar to this onion. So morphology is the smallest unit of meaning. It refers to like parts of words. So for example, the suffix s that we were talking about earlier. And this is like the middle ring, like the center of our onion, the ring in the very middle. Now, if we work our way upwards, outwards, sorry, you get to lexicology, and that's words themselves. That's the next biggest thing. It's the next, like the second ring, uh, that's like from the center. After that, if you go even further outwards, you have your third ring, and that's syntax. That's how words are put together. And our final outer ring, the biggest ring, is discourse, which is how the text is put together. It's like the biggest one, the outermost ring. So if you're struggling with like how the subsystems, sorry, um, let me just, okay. Yeah, if you're struggling with how the subsystems like put together, this should give you like a good understanding, like how it works. Now, in terms of the other two, so semantics and phonology, these two don't fit into this analogy. And that's because they're related to this style, uh, with like how you speak. So like it's all about how you write or how you say things rather than like what those things are. So this is like what you say. This is how you say it. So semantics, phonology, they're more so stylistic things. All right. Any question about anything so far? So up until here, we all okay with that? All right. Looks good. So let's move on to something called the Starcy effect, also known as the immediate effect or the immediate impact. Now, this here, like being able to describe the Starcy effect or the immediate effect, it's like probably like the most high yield skill uh for ACs and SAQs as well. So if you want to do really well in AC and SAQs, you gotta get really good at describing this. Now, what exactly is it? What exactly is this Darcy effect or this immediate effect that I'm talking about? Basically, every male language term has some sort of effect. It has an impact on the audience or the reader or the listener, viewer, whatever. And that could be either intentional or unintentional. We call this effect the Darcy effect or the immediate effect. It's the immediate surface level effect of the male language. So if you're still unsure about what I'm referring to, let me give you some examples. So if we have imperatives, for example, an imperative is basically a sentence that tells you to do something. So for example, buy this product, buy this iPhone. What would you say is the immediate effect or the starting effect of an imperative? What does it do? What's the surface level impact on the reader or the audience? Have a think. I'll give you a few seconds. How would you describe it? How would you put it into words? Remember, this is the most important skill for AC and SAQs. Yeah, so you can say it galvanizes the reader or the audience into action. Or you can say like it imparts, a sense of obligation, compulsion, like one of you said that as well. Or you can even say it delivers a call to action. So those are some ways to describe the immediate effect of an imperative. Hopefully you're getting the idea here. So the immediate effect of the status effect is just the surface level impact of the meta language. So what the meta language does. That's the simplest way to describe it. So status effect is what the meta language does. Simple as that. So all you need to do is to be able to describe it in a text. Now, a modal verb, let's move on to that. First of all, do you guys know what a modal verb is? So what's a modal verb? What are some examples of modal verbs? Yeah, will, should, what else? Must, could. Yeah, you get the idea. So a modal verb is basically a verb uh, that denotes, certainty, obligation, possibility, etc. There's like a few different things I denote, but like the idea is it includes words such as will or should or must or could. It's a type of auxiliary verb. It's a type of auxiliary verb, uh, and an auxiliary verb is basically just a helping verb. It's a verb that supports another bigger verb. Now, what would you say is the effect of a modal verb? How would you like describe it? So think about what these words do. Will, should, must, could. How would you put that into words? Like the effect of that. Yeah, you can say it creates a sense of immediacy, obligation. Okay, increases urgency. Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, so you can say like, okay, it lends certainty or conviction, or you can say like it denotes obligation, or you can say like, yeah, like it creates a sense of immediacy. It fosters a sense of immediacy. Yeah, that's pretty good. It really depends on the modal verb. I'll just like type that in. So yeah, it depends on the modal verb because there's different types of modal verbs. There's a different examples of modal verbs which each have like different effects. So the effect of will isn't exactly the same as the effect of should. But hopefully that gives you an idea as to like what they are, like how the style effect works when it comes to like modal verbs. Now, what about parallelism? So firstly, parallelism, quick active recall. What exactly is parallelism? Do you guys remember what it is? Yeah, yeah, similar syntactic structures. Yeah. Similar repeated. So similar repeated syntactic structures. Exactly right. Yeah. So for example, the one that always comes to mind for me is I came, I saw, I conquered. That's an example of parallelism. So you have this first person pronoun I and a verb. So I plus a verb, I plus a verb. And that same syntactic structure, that same like sentence structure is being repeated for three sentences or three clauses. So that's an example of parallelism. Now, how should you describe the effect here? What exactly does parallelism do? So think about like what saying this does. How should you describe the effect in words? It creates an effect. What kind of effect? Yeah, so you can say it creates an accumulative effect. Yeah, you can say it accentuates the repeated structures in a way, but the way to describe it would be it creates an accumulative or a compounding effect. So notice that when I use parallelism, it's sort of compounding, it's sort of adding up over time. We call that accumulative effect or a compounding effect. Sometimes even an overwhelming effect if you have a lot of parallelism. Or another way to describe it would be to say that it enhances memorability. So if I put something into like a parallel structure, it makes it a lot more memorable. So I wouldn't be able to remember this if it wasn't for the fact that it was parallel. So it enhances memorability, and that could be used to achieve a certain purpose as well, a certain goal of the author. Now, last one, I promise this is the last one. What about emphatic stress? So emphatic stress, just so you guys like know what it is basically when you're emphasizing a certain word or a part of speech. So for example, like okay, if I was like say, okay, every main language term has an effect, whether that's intentional or unintentional. Notice how I put emphasis on intentional and unintentional. That emphasis there is called emphatic stress, and the examiners like denote it with the underlining the text. So they underline a text, and that's like indication, uh, like that of the fact that it's like emphatic stress. So how should you describe the effect here? What exactly does emphatic stress do? Without saying emphasize. So don't say emphasize. Without saying emphasize, how should you describe the effect? Give me give me um another descriptor. You can say accentuates, yeah. Anything but emphasize. Yeah. Highlights, intensifies, yeah. When you say adds dramatic intensity, yeah. But whatever you want to say. Just don't say emphasize. Don't say emphasize. Because yeah, it's just very like generic if you say emphasize. Like most students in the state. Most students in the state are gonna say that. Yep. Those are good as well. Augments, amplifiers. You can say that as well. Yeah, you guys have a decent vocabulary, so that's good. All right. So any question about what the Starcy effect is? So my main point here for this entire section is that the Starcy effect is just the immediate effect of a male language term. So here's some examples. All right. I don't think anyone has any questions, so we'll move on. So that's it about male language. So that's all you need to know for male language, so far. It's just a way for you to describe language, and it has an effect. That's all I want you to know so far. And it can be categorized into subsystems. Now, we're done with the first fundamental concept. Now let's move on to the second one, SLVs. So let's move on to that. Sociolinguistic variables, aka contextual factors, aka SLVs. So does anyone know what they are? Like what exactly is an SLV? How should you define it? Just so we're clear about what they are. Like how should you define an SLV? It's a concept relevant to a text, kind of. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. So it's a factor, right, that influences text, right? So it so the thing that the text can be analyzed with respect to, right? So every text can be analyzed with respect to its SLVs. So think about the word variables. SLVs are social linguistic variables. Now, when you're doing methods that's general, variables are things that change depending on like what the question or like whatever scenario you have. So if you have X or Y in methods, it can mean anything. There's no specific number allocated to it, unless you like have some sort of context. So SLVs or social linguistic variables are just like that. They're variables that vary depending on the text, depending on the context, depending on the background. So yeah, just think of it like a variable. And those variables, that set of variables, actually multiple, but that set of variables changes depending on the context, depending on like the author or the speaker or the background of the text, whatever. So yeah, that's what you need to know. That's a basic introduction to SLVs, what they are. Now the ones you need to know, I'm giving you a list here. So we have register, tenor, function, purpose, intent, situational context, cultural context, audience. If you know these, you're pretty much set. Like there's nothing more outside of that that you need to know. If you know these really well, you have everything covered pretty much. All right, so I want to go through each of these in a lot of detail, just so you guys are like clear on what they are. There's no like gaps in your knowledge. Now let's start off with register. So register is just how informal or how formal the text is. Now register, uh, it can be a mix in some text. So not every text is completely informal or formal. It's actually very rare. It's pretty uncommon for a text to be completely formal or completely informal, unless it's like a legal document or like a conversation between like very, very close family members or school friends. So I just want you to know that nearly every text has some element of both informality and formality. So, for example, an advertisement, it might have informality to build rapport with the audience, to reduce social distance and build solidarity with the audience. But it's not going to be completely informal because if they're completely informal, they won't be able to like establish that professionalism. They won't be able to establish authority. So formal language also plays a role here, and every advertisement is also going to have some element or some degree of formal language in order to achieve like in order to establish authority or expertise or professionalism. And the idea of register is basically what you need to know for Unit 3. It's the focus of Unit 3. So Unit 3 is all about language variation and purpose. So language variation basically refers to the change in register. So variation in register and what that achieves. This is just like this sentence here reworded. If you want to reword what Vika's trying to say here, they basically mean when they say language variation purpose in the study design, they mean this. They mean variation in register, whether it's formal or informal, and what that achieves. So what does the informality do in a text? What does the formality do in a text? That's what you analyze in Unit 3. So by the end of Unit 3, you guys are going to be experts in register. And you're going to be able to analyze any text with respect to the register. Now let's move on to tenor. So tenor, I don't know why they named it tenor, but it's basically just synonymous with relationship. That can be between like the author and the audience, speaker and the audience, or like two speakers, interlocutors, to any sort of relationship that's formed in the text, that's reflected in the text. So you can have a conversation between two schoolmates, and the tenor there could be described as being close or like having low social distance or having social proximity. But in a legal document or something really formal, the tenor might be aloof and distant, like cold and detached. So my point here is that tenor varies with register. So that means tenor and register are closely intertwined. And that's why when we're writing AC, we always link tenor to register. We always link register to tenor because they're so closely linked. So that's my point here. So tenor is linked to register. Yeah, you always analyze tenor change alongside register change. So when you're analyzing an AC, so when you're writing an AC and you're writing a paragraph on register, when you're writing that paragraph, you also want to reference tenor and analyze tenor as well alongside like whether you're analyzing with register. So in your paragraph, you might talk about like informality, like for the first half of your paragraph for register. And you would analyze like what it does. For example, it allows you to like build rapport, reduce social distance, whatever. But then you'd also reference tenor as well and say that, okay, this informal register also results in a close tenor or a tenor characterized by social proximity or low social distance. So you just throw in register whenever so you just throw in tenor whenever you're analyzing register. That's the idea here. Are we all okay with these two, by the way? Is that all good? All right, perfect. So those are the first two I wanted to go through. Now let's move on to the next one, and that's context. Now, context can be split into two different types. So we have cultural context and situational context. So cultural context is like the deeper version of context. So It basically refers to the deeper ideas that underpin the text. And there's four ideas I want you to keep in mind. You can remember them using this mnemonic savvy. So there's four ideas: stereotypes, values, attitudes, and identity. Now, I'll just quickly go through each one and what they mean. So stereotypes basically just a generalization about a particular group. So for example, you're generalizing like homeless people. So if you say like all homeless people are like, um, they all cause their own situation or their own homelessness, then that's a stereotype, right? Or all homeless people are like uh, alcohol addicts, right? That's a stereotype. Gender stereotypes, right? Racial stereotypes as well. So there's many different stereotypes you can talk about. It basically just means a generalization about a particular group. Values, so pretty straightforward. It's just an emphasis on a particular attribute or an idea that a certain group or person has. So in Australia, we have very strong value for equality. Does anyone know what that is? Like, what's the name for this value here? Starts with the E as well. Starts with EG. Yeah, egalitarianism. Perfect. Egalitarianism. Now, you actually learn about this in Unit 4, Aerostate 1. We'll go into a lot more depth there. But yeah, in Australia, we have a value for equality as well. We also have value for mateship, camaraderie, anti-authoritarianism, uh, like anti-intellectualism. There's many different values that form part of our national identity. It doesn't always have to be national. Could be like your personal values. So, uh, you might value integrity or honesty as a person. As a group, you might value, respect or inclusivity. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be about Australia. It can be any value. Attitudes. So attitudes basically just means views or beliefs, that's another word for it, that are held by people towards particular things or particular groups of people. So in Australia, we're very welcoming, like when it comes to like locally made goods. So when something's like Australian made, we accept it, we embrace it, right? That's an example of an attitude. Or like sometimes like people might like dismiss things about like like the history of indigenous discrimination, right? Things like the stolen generation. People might dismiss it, and we call that like that's an example of dismissive attitudes. So there's different types of attitudes they can analyze. Identity, so pretty self-explanatory, but it's just the image or the persona projected by the author or the speaker. And there's two ways to group identity. So we have individual identity and group identity. So individual identity is just your personal attributes. So are you humble? Are you down to earth? Are you like mischievous, etc. Like just personal attributes. Now, a group identity, this is a bit more broad. So you have like, for example, like national identity, like your identity as a nation, so as Australia. We also have like social groups forming like their own identity. So for example, like the LGBTIQ plus community might have their own like sort of group identity. So even any group and any group like that has like a shared sort of identity, it can be analyzed with respect to group identity. Does that kind of make sense for cultural context? So these are the only things you need to know. So savvy is a mnemonic which you can use to memorize these ones. Stereotypes, values, attitudes, identity. Okay, so let's move on to situational context. Now this here is the more surface level version of context. So cultural context is more of a deep thing, and situational context is more like the surface level like type of context. And it consists of five main things. We have setting, mode, text type, domain, and tenor. So setting is just like the immediate setting of the text. So where is it set? Mode refers to whether it's written or spoken. And that can be reflected in something such as, for example, if it was written text, it might have like headings, subheadings. For the spoken text, it might have things like prosodics, assimilation, etc. Text type. So what kind of text is it? Is it advertisement, political speech, legal document, conversation between friends, etc.? Does anyone know what domain means? So what's a domain? So domain is another word for the field of the text. Yeah, the field or the subject matter. So what's the text about? So this lesson here uh has the domain of English language. So we're talking about English language here, and that's the field or the subject matter we're talking about. Tenor, so just basically what we were talking about earlier here. Now, some schools might discuss medium. So medium is basically just like how the text got from author or speaker to the audience. So it could be digital medium, online medium, etc. That's what we analyze for medium, but it's only for some schools. Vika's official definition is these five. So as long as you know these five, that's all good. All right. Let's move on to function. So function is the immediate or the surface level goal of a text. So there's an acronym they can use to remember. So it's called REC-PMP. And there's six functions you need to know. And we call these Roman Jacobson's six functions of language. So this guy named like Roman Jacobson, he like made up these six functions, and he basically said that every text has one or more of these functions. And every like yeah, these functions cover pretty much every text. So yeah, that's the basis for these six functions. That's why VK introduced them. And every text you analyze for AC, you want to like refer to like two of these functions. So pick two that fit for the AC that like work with the text and analyze those. Now let's actually go into like what these functions are. So what exactly do they mean? So referential function, what does referential function actually mean? Quick active recall, like revision from 1, 2. Yeah, so referential function is all about informing. So it's about a text aiming to inform people. So telling you information, pretty much. What about emotive? I mean, I think it kind of gives it away, like based on a name, but what's the motive function? Yeah, so it could be expressing emotion, or it could be also to elicit uh certain information. So elicit emotion, or like e- evoke or invoke emotions in the audience or the reader or whoever the text is targeted at. So yeah, there's two different ways to analyze the motive function. It could be either expressing your own emotion or like uh inciting certain emotions in other people. What about cognitive function? So what exactly is cognitive function? Okay, I'll give you a hint. An advertisement has a cognitive function. So if something's trying to advertise like a product or a service, like an iPhone, for example, that has a cognitive function. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So eliciting an action from audience. So it's all about like getting the audience or another interlocutor to do something, e.g., like buy an iPhone if it was advert. What about phatic? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, establish social connection, pretty much. Or social communion. That's another way to describe it. So if it was a conversation between friends or between anyone really, you're gonna have a phatic function because they're trying to establish that social connection. It's like the function uh version of like building rapport. That's another way to describe it. It's basically just small talk. You can say it's small talk. So hi, how are you? I'm good, thanks, etc. Those are some examples that you can analyze for phatic function. What about metalinguistic function? So think about meta language. What does that do? I mean, yeah, it's like very similar to what meta language does. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just describing language or analyzing language. Yeah. So if a text was, for example, a podcast about like about language, about slang in Australia that could have really salient male linguistic function. What about poetic? So what is a poetic function? So what does a poem do? Like a poem has a certain characteristic that you don't find in other texts. Not exactly abstract. It's all about aesthetics. The text must be aesthetically pleasing. So it must be like it must sound good or it must read really well. That's what a poetic function is in simple terms. So an advertisement might have a poetic function because it's trying to it's trying to sound like really nice and aesthetically pleasing. So does that give you guys an idea as to like what function is? Is that all good? Okay. I think I missed out on a couple. So we still need to do purpose, intent, and audience. Okay. So let's start with purpose. We'll do intent later. So and audience as well. Yeah. So purpose. Okay. Let's actually let's start off by saying in the study design, purpose and intent they're listed together. So if you look at the study design, Vika says purposes and intents. That's how they describe it. Now, even though, so basically, Vika sees them as the same thing. So if you just took function, so if you took purpose and intent to be the exact same thing, then that would be fine. Like, there's no issue with doing that. But, if you want to stand out, if you want to get like 45 plus, like 50, even just 40 plus, here's what we want to do. Instead of like treating them as the same thing, what you want to do is you want to like dichotomize it. You want to dichotomize uh purpose and intent into two things. So purpose, you want to treat it as like what's listed in the study design. So generic purposes from the study design. So if you look at the study design under unit 3, in the dot points, Vika should give you like a list of purposes. For example, build rapport, solidarity, authority, expertise, obfuscate. Those are all examples of purposes that are taken straight from the study design. That's why we call them generic purposes. So they're taken directly from the study design. Now, intent. Does anyone know what we should do with this? So how should we treat intent differently to purpose? What makes this idea of intent different to purpose? Any ideas? How can you stand out? How can you stand out from the rest of the state? Yeah, exactly. So the intent is something that's unique, something that's engaging and specific to the text. It's your own interpretation. Interpretation. Interpretation of the text motive. So what is the text trying to do? You want to like think about that. What's your own interpretation of that? And that's going to be your intent. And it's not from the study design. The key difference here is that intent is not taken from the study design. Things like rapport, things like building expertise, building solidarity, in-group membership, those are all taken from the study design. We call them generic purposes. But intent is something that you analyze in the AC. And it's your own interpretation of the text. So what's the text trying to do? And Vika accepts this as well. So if you look at the exam reports, you're going to see that in SAQs and ACs, Vika accepts uh, like things that are not from a study design as part of like someone's purpose or intent. So it's completely fine to do this. And it's actually favorable to do this because you're going to stand out from everyone else. You're going to get those really high study scores. So yeah, just one thing I wanted to clarify for purpose and intent. That's why I have them separately. That's why I split them into two different sections instead of treating them as the same thing. Because I want you to think of it separately. I want you to treat purpose and intent to be like two different things. So yeah, I kind of explained it here, but purpose, just to give you like a quick recap, a purpose is basically just a generic purpose, uh, purpose taken from the study design. For example, you have rapport, build rapport, build rapport, engender solidarity, build solidarity. You'd have, promote social harmony, uh, negotiate social taboos, or like promote in-group membership, obfuscate, authority, expertise. Yeah, there's like a whole list in the study design. If you want to like uh look through that, that'll be amazing. But it's basically just like anything taken from the study design. Now, intent, this is what will make you stand out. This is like uh what makes your AC stand out. So if you have a good intent, if you write a good, unique, engaging, specific interpretation of the purpose or the motive of the text, then you're going to really stand out from the rest of the students because what 99% of students will do is they'll just like, for their purpose or intent, they'll just use something from this list here. They won't think of their own unique or engaging intent. And as a result, it's hard for them to stand out. It's hard for them to get those really high study scores. So the top students, what the top students do in this subject is they like write up their own engaging and unique intent for the text. And that's what helps you stand out. So it's really hard to give you examples of this. So what I'll do is I'll give you an example of a text. So give me a text. Um, okay, let's just say it's a it's a text I've been using for this entire lesson, but we'll just say like it's an advertisement uh for iPhone 17. Let's just say that's our text. Oops. Um, yeah, okay. So what like how would you describe like the intent for this text, for this advertisement? How would you put it into words? And try to use something that's not from this list. I'll give you a few seconds. I'll give you like 30 seconds. Have a think. Have a think about what Apple here will be trying to do in this advertisement beyond their function, beyond their purpose. What would their like underlying motive be? How would you interpret it? How would you describe it? So I'll give you a few seconds and yeah, like send it through when you're done. Okay, yeah, we've got a few responses. Keep sending through. Yep, keep sending through, keep sending through. All right, yep. Looks pretty good. Yeah, I think you guys are getting the idea. That's good. It is pretty hard. I'll tell you this. Like getting the right intent, getting the best intent is actually a really difficult skill and it takes a lot of time to get good at. But let me just go through this. So when you describe the intent, you want to like write about something that isn't the purpose, something that isn't the function. So what many of you did was you guys basically just reworded the cognitive function. So that's something you don't want to do for intent. You don't want to reword something you've already written for function or purpose. You want something unique. You want something engaging. So what you want to do is you want to think about something creative, something that's specific to text, something engaging that other students won't write about. Now, like you can say that the intent for this text could be to engender brand loyalty. This doesn't fall under anything else. This is not linked to any purpose or function. It's something that's completely unique, completely uh like engaging and specific to this specific text here. And that's like one way to interpret the text, like the motive of the text. You can even say like another like intent, another interpretation of the underlying motive of the text could be a distance themselves, distance Apple from competitors who make like cheap, unreliable products. Or you can say like another way to interpret it would be like would be further the schism between Apple and other like technology companies. Or you can even say like another intent could be I'm just thinking on the spot right now. It could be to like promote or paint or portray their brand image as being like a customer oriented and innovative company. None of these things would be mentioned as part of functional purpose. It's something that's completely unique. It's something that stands out. I want you to just like pay attention to this. All of these intents, they stand out. When the examiner reads these, they're gonna go, okay, this student's different. Or the examiner will think, okay, this student or this AC is different. They're gonna know that you're not just any student. You're a top student. You're a student who deserves that 45 plus, that 50 study score. So if you get a really good intent, you're setting yourself up really well to get those scores. So yeah, does that kind of make sense about like intent, like how it works? I'll give you a hint, like I'll give you a tip as to like how you can like think about intent. So there's two tips I have when it comes to writing intent. So how can I write a better intent? How can I get better at writing intent? It's a very common question, like especially near the end of the year when everyone's like cramming for exams. They ask me, okay, like Neil, I'm still struggling with intent. I'm still getting these really dry, boring and generic interpretation of the text. How can I get better? How can I really stand out and get that study score, get that like 15 out of 15 for the AC? So there's a few tips I have for you guys. The first thing, my biggest tip here would be to think about perspective. I want you guys to really put yourself in the shoes. Put yourself in the shoes of the author or the speaker. So if you were Apple here, if you were making this advertisement for the brand new iPhone 17 Pro Max, what would you be doing? What would your underlying goal be? What would your ulterior motive be when you're writing this, when you're like creating this advertisement? Beyond just simply like, doing these things or these things. Something deeper. Think about your like think about something that's like really important to you. As a company, as Apple, you want to engender brand loyalty. That's your intent. You want to distance yourself from Samsung, from Huawei, from Nokia, from all the other companies, right? And further the schism between you and all the other cheap, unreliable companies. Right? You want to promote your brand image as a company as being very customer oriented, as being innovative. That's what's gonna help you stand out. If you like really just like put yourself in the shoes of the author or the speaker, you're really gonna like stand out. Secondly, one thing I recommend you guys do when it comes to writing intent is I want you guys to think about cultural context. So what's the acronym we use for cultural? What's that mnemonic? Quick active recall. Yeah, savvy, yeah. So we have stereotypes, attitudes, values, identity. When you're thinking of your intent, when you're writing your intent, what you want to do is you want to use like these ideas to construct your intent. So if you look at, for example, this one here, like engender brand loyalty, which of these like which of these which of these concepts is this intent linked to? Stereotypes, attitudes, values, identity. Attitudes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because like you're like changing attitudes towards the company. You're making customers more loyal. This one here, distancing Apple from competitors. We make cheap, unreliable products. That has to do with what? Identity, right? So you're like you're like building your identity, you're constructing your brand image as being uh like separate or like different compared to other companies. So same with this one as well, brand image, right? But customer oriented, innovative, what are those? Those are values, right? So do you see how every intent is somehow linked to savvy or your cultural context? So that's why thinking about cultural context is really going to help you get this really nice intent. And the last one, the last tip I have for you guys is I want you to make a list of verbs or verb phrases, analytical verbs or verb phrases for your intent. So you want to like have this list ready that you can use like if you're ever stuck like when you think of an intent. If you're doing AC, writing AC, and you're like stuck when it comes to like the intent, you want like a list to refer back to. Obviously, don't bring like a list into the exam or into the SAC, but have a list in your head of really nice analytical verbs or verb phrases they can use for your intents. Those three tips will really help you get better at writing intents. Any question about intent or purpose or function? We all good with that? All right. So this here, like function, purpose, intent. What are these linked to? What's the broad sort of theme here for function, purpose, intent? It's linked to what? It's what the text is trying to do, right? So we call this, like, let me just write it down here. Like function, purpose, intent. We call this our motive triad. So it's the three SLVs that reflect the motive of a text, what the text is trying to do. And you'll see that they're situated in a gradient. So function is the most shallow. It's the most shallow interpretation of what the text is, what the text is trying to do, the goal, the motive of the text. Purpose is the next deepest thing. And lastly, we have intent, and that's the deepest one. That's the deepest, most engaging. So you'll see that you're forming a gradient here from most shallow to most deep, the deepest. Shallow to deep, in simple terms. So that should sort of give you like an idea as to like how they fit in the big picture. So when you analyze the motive of a text, you analyze these two things, function, purpose, intent, in this gradient here. And this gradient here also forms a basis uh, for our introduction, AC introduction, like the structure of our AC introduction. Structure of our AC introduction. And I'll go into this in future lessons. But just yeah, keep that in mind. Now, let's move on to the last one. Audience is pretty straightforward. So you don't explicitly refer to AC. You don't explicitly refer to audience in your AC. So you don't need to explicitly reference audience in your AC. You only like say, okay, oh, the audience is XYZ. You like incorporate it into your function or your purpose. Obviously for SAQ, the SAQ is asking about like audience, then you gotta explicitly state it. But in an AC, you don't have to do it, just to keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to audience, there's two types of audiences. Does anyone know what those two types are? Think about how you can group audiences. Okay, so the first type of audience is like the direct target audience for the text. And we call this a primary audience. So let me give you an example of a text. Uh, the example I always give for audience is Kevin Rudd's apology speech about like the stolen generation. Stolen generation. So in this apology, his target audience was like indigenous communities who were affected by the stolen generation. But that wasn't the only audience. It wasn't just specifically targeted at this audience. This apology speech was also viewed by all Australians, and we call that our secondary audience. So our broader audience, not necessarily like just the target audience, we call that a secondary audience. And that's like another group. That's the second group of audience. So audience can be grouped into two categories, primary and secondary. So just so you know, uh, that's a way to categorize it. Are we all okay with audience? Okay, perfect. So that's it for SLVs. So now you guys have a solid understanding about SLVs and male language. So now you know uh, what SLVs are and what male language is. So you have a strong foundation for each of the three sections. Now, there's a big question though. Why did I teach you these two things specifically? Like, you guys might think, okay, this is really random. Like, why are we learning about male language and SLVs? Like, they're not even linked together. But let me show you how these two things actually fit into a big picture. So, where's that up to? Okay. How does it all fit in? Like, why did I teach you male language and SLVs? Like, it seems so random, doesn't it? Well, basically, the fundamental principle of analysis in English is linking male language to an SLV. That's it. It's as simple as that. That's all you need to do. So, all you need to do, every single elaboration you write, every analysis you write in English, all you're doing is just starting with male language and you're working your way towards an SLV. So you use male language such as, for example, slang, jargon, something from lexicology, syntax, semantics, metaphor, something, whatever male language you're using, and you analyze it, you unpack it, you explain it, and you link it to an SLV or a contextual factor or a broader element of the context and how it reflects or influences or gives impetus to that SLV. So it could be function, purpose, context, register, audience, whatever it is. That's it. That's the basic principle of analysis. And this very principle applies to all sections, SAQ, AC, and SA. So that brings us to the question, how do we even elaborate on features in English language? So how do we get from male language to SLV? What's the process? What's the formula? What's the structure? What's the framework? Now, for year 10 animation, you're probably used to the teal framework. So quick reminder, like what exactly is a teal framework? What do you guys learn for that? What do you start with in teal? What's the first thing? The T stands for yeah, topic. Yeah, what about the E? What's the first E? Yeah, so the first E is evidence. Yeah. Then you have explanation. Bro, why is it? What's the not the number E? Um, yeah, explanation. And then L is a link. Yeah, linking sentence, whatever. Now in England, we don't use teal. We use something pretty similar, and we call it an elaboration block. Now it's basically like the alternative for teal. And this is like the England alternative for teal. So let me teach you the basic structure of an elaboration block. And this elaboration block, this basic structure here, it can be used in all three sections. So all three sections, they like they have this fundamental principle that underpins analysis in all three sections is linking male language to SLV. Regardless of whether you're writing SAQ, AC, essay, this skill is transferable. It applies to all three sections. And you can use this very same structure in all three sections with a few tweaks here and there, but we'll go into that in future lessons. So an elaboration block, the whole goal of an elaboration block is to get you from A to B, from male language to SLV. Remember, that's the fundamental principle of analysis in English language. So you start with male language and you work your way towards an SLV. Now, what comes in between? So firstly, After your main language, obviously you got to go actually like quote the example. You got to like um you actually say what the example is. And if it's an AC or an SAQ, you also include a line number as well. That's your line number. So this is basically your evidence, pretty much. Very similar to what you have like for teal. So your evidence. Except this time you include a line number for SAQ and AC. Now, after you've quoted your main language, like you reference your main language and you've quoted the example, you move on to something else. And this something else here is the bridge between your main language and your SLV. It's like the key step here. And before I actually tell you what this key step is, I just want to say something. And that is students who miss this key step, they get the feedback you haven't expanded, expanded or explained enough from the teacher. So whenever you get this feedback that you haven't actually elaborated enough on your main language or your example, that means you're missing this key step here. Now, does anyone know what this key step is that bridges your main language and your link to the SLV? Think about what we covered earlier for main language. What does main language do? It's a bridge between main language and the SLV. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this key step here is your stylistic effect or your immediate effect. So if you get this right, then it forms the basis for your entire elaboration. And it allows you to link or bridge the SLV and the main language. So that's the basic structure. So you start with main language, then you move on to your example and line number, of course. Then you explain your stylistic effect or your immediate effect. This is very important. If you miss this, you're going to lose a lot of marks. And then finally, you link it to an SLV. So something from a list we covered earlier. Now, here's some examples of elaborations I did for my ACs, and I want to show you guys how I actually applied this to an ACE. These are all elaborations, by the way, from ACs and SAQs. So let's just color code it first. So we'll just make main language green, example yellow, style effect blue, and link to SLV will make it pink. So phrasal verb, that's our main language here. We move on to the actual quote itself. So hangout, that's our example. And of course, we call it number as well, line number as well. Now, the stylus effect is linked to our main language. So stylus effect goes hand in hand with the main language. And it's the immediate impact of whatever the main language name is. So a phrasal verb is a feature of informality. It's a feature that makes a text informal. And what I've done in this elaboration is I've actually expanded on what the effect is of a phrasal verb. So I said, okay, it nurtures a conversational tone uh, to consolidate jovial atmosphere, whatever. And that's our immediate effect. Now, finally, we'll link to SLV. So SLV that we're linking to here is register, more specifically, the informal register. And that way, I've structured my elaboration using this four-step process. And this four-step process can be applied to any text. So if you want, as part of your homework, I recommend going through each of these elaborations and really thinking about like how I've used this structure, how I've actually applied each of these steps in an AC. All right, we all okay with that? So how elaboration blocks work, so how main language and SLVs fit into a big picture. All right, perfect. So let's move on to three sections for the line exam. Now, the line exam is 2 hours, so pretty time pressured, and you have three sections to complete within those 2 hours. So two of these sections, they're text-based, and the ACE and SAQ. So basically, VCAL gives you a text. It can be any text, anything from the real world, and you ask to analyze it. In AC, you ask to write like a essay or like a extended response on a text. And SAQ, they give you 4 to 5 questions to like discuss, to answer about that text. And that's why we call them text-based. So they're based on whatever text figure gives you. Now the final section here, this essay, is topic-based. So the essay is the section that's like a bit different from the other two. And you're given a topic. Instead of like Vika giving you a text, Vika gives you a topic they can use to like analyze and write an essay on. Now we'll go into these in a bit of detail very soon, but just know that this is like the fundamental sort of principle. Like this is how each of the sections work. So section one, SAQ, is text-based, and you ask questions. We have directed analysis. So VCAR directs you towards what they want you to talk about. AC is text-based. So you're given a text and it's undirected. So VCAR doesn't say, okay, talk about this and link it to this. There's no specific restrictions. There's no questions that direct you to do specific things. Obviously, they give you a list, like a checklist of things to cover in AC, but it's not like a set of questions. That's why you call it undirected. And the essay is topic based. So yeah, book based, topic based. We'll go into that later. Uh, Now let's move on to section 8, so SAQ. Now, like I said, text based and directed analysis. These are some examples of SAQ questions taken from 2017 VCA. And I just want to show you something. And before I actually show you, like I'll tell you this, right? When examiners write SAQ questions, they use this fundamental like principle that I was talking about earlier here. So linking male language to an SLV. Every SAQ question, it uses this fundamental principle. So every SAQ question will involve linking male language to some sort of SLV. And I want to show you guys how this actually presented, like how these SAQs actually do it. So looking at this first, no, sorry, let me just write it down. Looking at this first question here. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward, but there's no real analysis. All you have to do is identify two social purposes. But let me look at like another one, and I want to show you guys how this principle is applied here. So firstly, this question asks you to identify and comment on the use of two different prosodic features between lines 12 and 20. So firstly, the male language involved here is prosodic features. Now, Vega has actually been pretty lenient here, and they haven't actually specified an SLV for you to link to. So when they say comment, the word comment means link to anything, any SLV. So there's no restriction here. So basically, this question is based on you linking male language that falls part of that's like part of prosodic features to any SLV. Looking at question 3. Using appropriate male language, identify and explain two specific language features that reflect Tim Minchin's identity. So, firstly, in terms of male language, they're being pretty linear here. So, they're just saying two specific language features. And this just means any subsystem. So, there's no restriction as to what male language you choose. But this time it asks you to link it to identity, which is part of what? What's identity like part of? Which SLV is it linked to? So remember savvy? Yeah, so it's part of savvy. It's part of cultural context. So identity here is our SLV that we're linking to, or in other words, cultural context. So this question is based on you linking any male language term to the SLV of identity or cultural context. Question 4. Using appropriate male language, discuss the features or strategies of spoken discourse that Tim Minchin uses to manage this text. Now, features or strategies of spoken discourse. This is like part of a subsystem. It's part of spoken discourse. Remember, there's two types of discourse. So there's spoken discourse and written discourse. Your restriction here for male language is discussing spoken discourse. Now you're linking to manage this text, like the idea of managing this text. This here isn't exactly SLV, but it's also something we link to. And we call it like conversational strategies. And this in itself is a male language term. So there's no real restriction for SLVs here. You're basically just analyzing the use of spoken discourse and conversational strategies. And we'll go into those in a lot more depth in future lessons. But just know that this is an example of an SAQ where they're using this framework here, linking male language to an SLV. All right. Now let's move on to the next section. So section B, the AC. This is text-based. So Vega gives you a text, but this time, instead of asking you questions, it's undirected analysis. So you're asked to basically write an essay about the text. Say essay in quotation marks because it's not exactly an essay. It's something unique to English language. But what you're doing is you're basically writing about what the text does and what it reflects. And yeah, in simple terms, writing an essay on a text could be any text. So it's written, spoken, informal, formal, and you don't know what the text is. So it could be any text. You don't know you don't even know what the mode is, or what text type it is. It could be literally anything, and therefore you have to be prepared for absolutely anything VCAR throws at you. Now, in order to prepare yourself for this, the best way to do it is by getting exposure to a wide variety of text. That's the best thing you can do. So this here is what will separate you from your peers, from the rest of the cohort, from the rest of the state. So even if your peers are really good, if they've only done 5 practice texts and you've done 20 or 30, you have a lot more exposure than them. You have a lot more experience with a wider variety of text. And that means that you're more accustomed to different types of text. You're more likely to be familiar with what VCAR throws at you. And that's really, really good. That's a really, really good position to be in for the exam and for your SACs as well. So yeah, the key to doing well in ACs is exposure. Now, let's actually get into the details of how you can analyze a text. So when you're analyzing a text, there's 3 different components that you want to break it down into, that you want to unpack it with respect to. So we call these the 3 lenses. The first lens is tone, second one's motive, third one's context. So starting with tone, does anyone know what I mean when I say tone? What does tone actually mean? It was one about SLVs. I'll give you that. That's a hint. The style of language? Yeah, and what's a way to describe the style of language used? Think about tone. You can have a casual or conversational tone, or you can also have a professional tone. Yeah, not tenor, but register. Register. So when you're analyzing tone, you analyze register and you throw in tenor as well. And you link to tenor. Because tenor goes hand in hand with register. But yeah, that's the first way to unpack a text. So you talk about the informal language, the informality of the text. And what does it aim to do? Well, what's the purpose? What's the goal? What's the underlying reason for using informality? And you analyze formality as well. And you do the exact same thing. You analyze the underlying reason for using formality and also what the informality achieves and oops, uh, what the formality achieves. So that's how you analyze tone. And we do this in our register paragraph for our AC. And I'll go through the AC structure soon, but that's the basic idea. When it comes to analyzing tone, you analyze the informality and the formality, if applicable. So it depends on the text. Some text, very rare, but some text might be completely informal, completely formal. In that case, you only want to analyze one. But most texts will have a degree of both informality and formality. And in those texts, you want to analyze the underlying reason for using each register and what effect that has. So what does the informal language do? Does it help you reduce social distance? Does it help you foster a humanized brand image for a company? So there's different ways to analyze it. But That's what you want to do. And of course, link it to tenor as well. So what tenor does the informal language create? The informality create? So a formal register might create a tenor that's like, cold or aloof or detached or professional or uh, like bureaucratic. But on the other hand, an informal register might create a tenor that's warm or friendly or jovial or convivial or affable or amiable. Right? So that's just like those are just some descriptions for tenor that you can analyze and link to a register. Now, the second thing is motive. Now, what do you guys think I'm referring to when talking about motive? So yeah, it is once again SLV. So we're linking to SLVs here. Yeah, we're referring to a motive triad here. Wait, why is this? Yeah, yeah. There we go. Make it 11. Okay. Yeah. So we're referring to a motive triad here, and this is basically just like FPI. Okay, make it 10. That's better. Yeah. So the motive triad is FPI. So function, purpose, intent, and this is basically just the underlying, like the motive of a text. Like, what's the text trying to do? And we can break it down into FPI or a motive triad. And that's motive triad, this motive triad that we have here, FPI, it's based on the gradients. So we work our way from most shallow to deepest. And that's how we sort of structure our paragraph on motive. Now, finally, we have context as well. So context can be split into two different things. So can anyone remind me what those two types of context are? So what are the two types? There's one deep and one surface level. Yeah, situational and cultural. So situational context and cultural context. So situational context is like surface level. So remember the five that I went through earlier? So things like tenor, mode, setting, field, text type. That's what you want to analyze here for situational context and cultural context as well. So you use the acronym SAVI and you analyze those four concepts that form part of cultural context. So yeah, these three components, they form the basis of our AC structure. And we'll go into AC structure soon in future lessons. But we use these three lenses to structure our AC. And it forms a very effective AC if you like structure it in this way. Okay, we have a question. So to avoid repetition, what elements of tenor do you include in tone as compared to context? You don't really link context to tenor. So the best place to incorporate tenor is your register paragraph. So when you're analyzing register, you also want to throw in tenor as well, and that's the best location to analyze it in your AC. For the other ones, you just want to analyze FPI and context. Those are the best things to analyze here. Hopefully that answers your question. If that doesn't make sense, let me know. Okay, so we have around 13 minutes left. I want to go through an essay first. But just so we have all stones like unturned, like we have like everything covered. I just want to go through essay, like the content for that, and want to make sure you're all okay with how essays work. And then we'll go through this practice text for essays later on. But let me just quickly go through essays first. I want to show you guys like how essays. I want to show you guys an example of an essay topic and how essays work and how you should unpack essays. So firstly. Essays are like the odd one out compared to like AC and SAQ. Because the thing is, they're topic based. You're not given a text, you're not given like something from VCUP. You have to use your own examples, which you've collated from the internet. So essays are like something that's you have to like write your own like use your own examples for. And you can't like rely on the text for examples. And that means the world becomes your text because you're using examples from the world. The world is like your source of media examples, which you use to answer the topic, to answer the question. So yeah, here's the example of an essay topic. So when it comes to essay topics, there's two fundamental components. We have a prompt. This refers to the actual sentence here, the thing that directs the course of our essay. And the second thing is a stimulus. So these are hints given by Vika, given by the examiner about like what they want you to write about. So those are two components of an essay topic. And it's something that like the second thing, the stimulus, is something that you never want to forget. Because if you forget stimulus, you're gonna lose a lot of marks for essays. So just keep that in mind. But that's the basic structure. That's what you want to like take into consideration whenever you're writing your essay response. Now, how do you structure an essay? So an essay like is pretty similar. Like an essay in English is pretty similar to an essay in English mainstream or like literature. Same structure. Actually, I think literature is different, but similar to mainstream because you have an introduction, three-way paragraphs, and a conclusion. It's as simple as that. So very straightforward. There's a minor difference in that for your body paragraphs, instead of analyzing like quotes from a text or a novel or something, you're analyzing your own examples from the media. So you analyze two examples uh, in each body paragraph, and you do that for each body paragraph. So that's that's a basic structure for an essay. And these examples are taken from the real world, from real life text. Contemporary examples as well. So you want to use examples from this year or late. You want to use examples from late this year or next year. So it has to be like within like 12 months of the exam. Sometimes order examples are better for specific varieties we'll go into later, but like you want to aim for contemporary examples, so examples that are relatively recent. And I'll give you some example. I'll give you like a lot of examples throughout the year for you to use in your essays. I can't give them straight away because like the examples they sort of appear in the internet like throughout the year. Like they don't all like come up all at once. So yeah, like the best examples, they usually are the ones that come like midway through a year because you have events such as like for example like Nine Dog Week, Remembrance Day, you have like political issues as well happening throughout the year, and that's where you get like really good examples and use those in your essay. So yeah, don't like start looking for examples right now because you're very, very unlikely to find good examples because your restriction like starts from like whenever the English exam was this year, uh, and it ends at like your exam. So you have an entire year to find essay examples, and you're not going to have many at the start of the at the start of this period. So you want to wait it out, and wait for those good examples to come, and then that's what's gonna like good examples really carry your essay. So yeah, don't worry about finding too many examples right now. Just focus on developing the skills. And yeah, of course, I'll give you a bunch of examples as well for you to use. All right, so yeah, we have around 9 minutes left. So let me just go through this essay, sorry, this AC text with you guys, and I want to show you guys my approach for analyzing AC text. So the text we have here, it's Uh, it's written by Australian Red Cross Lifeline, and this is a not-for-profit organization that's funded by a government, and basically it promotes like blood donations. So I've actually donated blood with them once as well, and basically they just like ask donors to donate blood, and they give that blood to like people who need it. So people in like who have like medical emergencies. So this is like a promotional sort of like advertisement in a way, written by Red Cross Lifeboat. And it's like getting people, getting Australians to donate blood. It's encouraging, like trying to like persuade Australians to donate blood. So that's the general summary of what the text is. Now, before I go into that, I want to like go through one thing, and that is the idea of anticipation. Now, when it comes to any text, like for any AT text, you never like dive straight into the text. Never just like start reading the text and then like start looking for examples. That's the most inefficient thing that you can do. Because the thing is, if you just dive into a text without having any understanding about the broader context, about the big ideas that underpin the text, what's going to happen is you're going to get lost. You get lost very easily, and the examples you find won't be that good. And you'll be stuck in a very, very big labyrinth of examples. So instead, what you want to do is you want to start by reading the blurb or the summary that Vika has given you. So this is like a blurb or something that Vika has given us for his text before we actually read the text. And the like Vika wants you to actually read through his text and get you to actually understand the big picture, the broader ideas first, before diving into the text and trying to find those examples. So every top student, what they do is they actually start with a blurb. They never start with like the text itself. They start by reading the blurb. They think about the broad ideas first. And the students who get like 45 plus, the students who get like 50, what they do is they predict the best ideas and the best features. Because the thing is, the truth is that like the best features and ideas, the SLVs, right, uh, they can be predicted. Like you don't need you don't need to read through the entire text to understand what the big pictures are. And the thing is, you can even predict certain features of the text without even like reading the text. And those features are usually like one of the best features because they make sense. They click with the motive, with the big ideas of the text. So that's why the students who get like really high for ACs, they predict the best ideas. They predict the best features. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll quickly go through this text with you guys, and I want to show you guys how I actually approach this text. So firstly, looking at this text here, I want to think about what the broader ideas are, what this text is trying to do. And we'll just start with function. That's the most basic things to start off with. So in terms of function, the primary function here is going to be cognitive. Why? It's because they're trying to like galvanize, like impel Australians to donate blood. It's as simple as that. So it's very surface level, very shallow. A secondary function in this text could be like emotive, right? To engender sympathy or empathy. Or you can say like the emotive function could be to even motivate, like inspire a sense of motivation in Australians to donate blood. The purpose, remember this is something from the generic list of purposes from study design. It could be in this case to like uh you can say promote solidarity, like engender solidarity, that could be one. Like through a shared like egalitarian value, right? Egalitarian ethos. Because when it comes to blood donations, you're helping someone else. And not everyone is in an equal position. Some Australians, they're struggling with uh like medical emergencies and they need blood desperately. And that means they're not on like an equal level to you. And what you want to do is you want to promote that sense of equality and get people to help others. They want to uphold that egalitarian ethos, right? You can even say mateship as well, right? So it inspires a sense of mateship, right? Through a shared value of mateship. You can even say that as well, right? And you're appealing to like Australian sense of like their values and their national identity, and you're engendering solidarity with them who that shared background, that shared sort of like vision or motive. Now, in terms of intent, there's a lot of things I can say. So, firstly, I'll give you guys the floor here. Uh, I don't want to give it away. I want to like get you guys to actually think about what the intent could be for this text. So, I'll give you 30 seconds. Have a think about what this text is trying to do on a deeper, sort of like broader level. Make it unique, make it engaging, and try to stand out if you can. So, yeah, send it through if you're done, by the way. It is a bit tricky, I'll agree. It is a bit tricky to actually get the best intent for this one, but have a go. Yeah, looking good so far. I think you guys are definitely improved compared to the last one. So yeah, you guys gained the idea now. Yep, really good. All right. Yeah, looks good. So firstly, like in terms of what I thought the intent was, you can say like one of the intents is to inspire or ignite or invoke, right? A sense or impel, right? A sense of moral duty or responsibility in Australians, right? Uh, to donate blood, right? And in turn, uphold, like the ideal like mateship or egalitarianism. So that's one way you can interpret it. One of you sent one that was really good. So, like, one of you said, okay, shift the perception of blood donations from being like charity work to like being like a sense of like to being a moral or a social responsibility. And that's really good. That's a good way to like interpret it. So yeah, I think some of you guys also said decent ones as well. So yeah, like I think all of you guys wrote like pretty good intent, which is really good. Like you guys are definitely improved compared to the last one, and that's good. Um, I think yeah, like that's a good starting point. You only really need one intent, but yeah, you can use any of these or anything similar to this, and that would work fine for intent. Now, in terms of cultural context, I don't want to go through everything in detail. It's like we are sort of running out of time, but I'll quickly go through like some ideas you can discuss for cultural context. So for cultural context, firstly, for values, you can analyze mateship, you can analyze egalitarian ethos, attitudes towards like blood donation, so you're shifting the perception or attitudes. Or you can even say like, or like you can even say like invoking like a social uh paradigm shift towards like blood donations. What is the concept of blood donation? And that could be a one way to analyze cultural context as well. Stereotypes not really relevant for this text. Identity, like they're not really trying to promote themselves here. They're more so like getting Australians to do something, which is like doing blood donations, like giving blood. So it's not really linked to identity either. You can even okay, you can say national identity, which technically is linked to values, but nothing to do with like their identity. So yeah, that's what you can analyze for cultural context. Situational context, very straightforward, very surface level. So just like talk about the text type, the mode, the domain, subject matter, etc. Now I want to go through some features before we run out of time. So firstly, um, looking at this text here, like, do you guys see any features that stand out? Let's see it. Like, were there any features that really stood out to you that you thought were really salient? It's a hard skill. I want you guys to have a think about like what features in this text help support these motives. Okay, I might just go through it. So, um, of course, you're welcome to like find features in the meantime as well. But let me just show you guys some features that like could be analyzed in this text here. So I'll start from the start. Australian Red Cross Lifeblood, that's a heading here. So you can say that's part of formatting for written discourse. Not too high yield, but still a feature. Line two, take the bloody oath. Now there's a couple of features here. There's actually a few features here. What do you guys think? Firstly, what type of sentence is this? Let's see what you guys think. Yeah, it's an imperative, right? Take the bloody oath. It's an imperative. And therefore, you can say it like actuates Australians. Actuates Australians. Or it like inspires them to take action. Right? It inspires them to like go and donate blood. But there's something else as well. Bloody. What's that? There's two male language terms to describe bloody. Not colloquial language. It's actually okay, you can say colloquial, but there's a better way to describe it. Not ethnolex, no. So bloody is in a way, yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly. Very good. Very good. This is it. So, like, firstly, it's the pun, which you got right. Secondly, it's dystomistic and it's like mildly profane. as well. So bloody is like considered like almost like a slur, like almost like a swear word in a way. So it's considered profane. It's the example of a profanity. So those are two main language terms I was looking for. In this mistake as well, in a way. But mildly profane and pun. And yeah, not really semantic field. What I mean, that's not really like relevant here. You can say pun, but like that's what it's linked to. But yeah, like those are two main language terms that you want to analyze here. So it's a pun as well because blood is what you're donating, and bloody is like a way for you to like intensify something or like add more dramatic sort of intensity or something. So yes, mildly profane. And that like the profane nature of bloody intensifies it. It makes it a lot more memorable. It makes it a lot more like informal and casual and conversational. And the pun is linked to humor. So you can say that the pun is intended to like incite humor and therefore lower the register towards informality. Line three, we're asking Australians around the country to take the bloody oath and born a promise to be a regular blood donor. Okay, look at this oath. We have it in line two as well. So, what does oath sort of remind you of? Think about it. You say oath in what sort of setting? An oath is taken in like, yeah, a pledge to a country in a way, yeah. So, an oath, it's something that's uh, like it's redolent of legal jargon. It's something that's like legal in nature. The oath is like a pledge that you make to the country or like the people, right? And what does that do? It allows you to associate the idea of blood donations to like something that's like a legal duty or like almost like a obligation to the country. And that it like inspires a sense of responsibility. So that's the way you can analyze that. Let's move on to line five. So Australia needs you. You can say active voice because Australia is put in the position of a subject here, an agent, and you're sort of like framing Australia as an entity that requires your support. So you can say active voice as well. Not the best, but it's all right. Line six, right now, one in two donors are unable to make their donation due to isolating or feeling unwell. Nothing much to analyze there. Question seven, line seven, can you take their place? What do we have here? Can you take their place? What do you call that? So, yeah, it's a call to action, but that's not a main language term. So it does like function as a call to action, but it's not a main language term. So how should you label this with main language? Remember, every main language term, so every example must be described or must be labeled using a main language term. So it's a question, right? And what do we call a question? Yeah, interrogative, yeah. And what type of interrogative is it? Starts with a R. Yeah, exactly. Rhetorical interrogative. So a rhetorical interrogative is one that's like, yeah, why isn't this working? Uh, wait. Sorry, my Zoom's playing up. Give me a second. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what's happening. Uh, rhetorical interrogative. Yeah, sorry, my Zoom's playing up. But yeah, like rhetorical interrogative. That's that's a main language term for this. Now, what does it do? How should you describe the stylistic effect or the immediate effect of using a rhetorical interrogative? So, what does a rhetorical interrogative do? How should you describe the impact on the reader or the audience? It questions people, right? So you can say it impels Australians or readers to question their duty or their moral or their social responsibility to donate blood. And that in turn can be linked to intent or cognitive function. So that's how you can elaborate on a rhetorical narrative. Line 8, it's a big responsibility, but the feeling you get knowing you help to save lives, nothing short of extraordinary. Nothing much there. Line 10, if you're ready to give hope, joy, and second chances, take the bloody oath and book your blood donation today. Hope, joy, and second chances. There's two male language terms that can be used to describe this. Hope, joy, second chances. So firstly, it's presented as what? Think about syntax. It's a list, right? Hope, joy, and second chances. So firstly, it's a list. Um, and you can say like a list has a compounding effect, or almost like a overwhelming effect in a way, like somewhat overwhelming effect. And how can you link that to like the broad ideas? Basically, you can say that like the blood donation has like various, like a multitude of benefits of like impacts or positive impacts on society, and that can inspire you to donate blood. But it is good. It's good. It's good in my language term, but there's more. There's an even better male language term that can be used to describe. Yeah, so firstly, very good at it, yeah. So you can start with positive connotations, uh, and how like blood, like donating blood allows you to like promote hope or like give hope and joy and second chances, which is like it connotes to opportunity, it connotes to like happiness. But there's an even better male language term. Hope, joy, second chances. Are those things tangible or are they like, you know, abstract? Yeah, they're abstract nouns, aren't they? This here is the best male language term to describe this. Like only like 1% of students will actually get this. Most students, they will say either listing or positive connotations. Like 99% of students will say this. But only like the 1%, the top 1%, they'll label it as abstract nouns. Why would they do that? I'll ask you, like, why would the top students, when they see this feature, why would they say abstract nouns? What's the point of using abstract nouns? As Australian Red Cross Lifeblood, what's the benefit of using abstract nouns? You can link it to cultural context. How? How would you link it? Like, what would the stars effect be? Start with the effect. Always start with the effect and then work your way towards broad ideas. Have a think. Okay, firstly, like hope, joy, and second chances. Those are things that are intangible. What about blood? Blood is physical. It's a tangible thing, isn't it? So basically saying like you're not just donating blood, you're also donating hope. You're donating joy. You're donating second chances. So you can say that the abstract nouns, they imply or suggest that the effects of the donation, or the positive impacts of the blood donation, they transcend physical barriers. Right? So the donation isn't just about giving blood, it's about giving hope. It's about giving joy, about giving second chances as well. And that in turn, it like sort of like sheds light into like uh the profound, you know, social importance of blood donation. And that can inspire like readers or audience, whatever. You can link that to any SLV you want. But the idea is like this is like the best elaboration for this feature. Let's move on. Line 12, commitment to making a difference. I hereby swear to be the lifeblood of Australia. This is an amazing feature. There's three male language terms here. So one, two, and three. So who can tell me the first one? I hereby swear to be the lifeblood of Australia. Okay, not exactly the personification, but it is a semantic feature. I'll tell you that. It is a semantic feature. So that's what the M. That's what the M. Yeah, metaphor. Yeah. So lifeblood here is a metaphor that refers to like that you're like labeling the person or the donor as like so you're saying like the donor isn't just a person, the lifeblood of Australia. And that in turn it like it accentuates or like it highlights the pivotal role right, uh of donors in Australian society. They're almost like forming the backbone of Australian society. So the metaphor is a pretty good feature to analyze. But there's two more features. So what's number two and three? I hereby swear to be the lifeblood of Australia. Think syntax. Yeah, active voice. Yeah. So active voice, what does it do? It gets you to position yourself as a donor. You're not saying, okay, like that this text here isn't saying, okay, you should hereby swear to be a lifeblood. It's saying I hereby swear to be the lifeblood. So what's it doing? It's getting you, right? It impels readers to assume the responsibility of a donor, of being, the responsibility or duty of a donor, of a blood donor. That can relate to like inspiring people or invoking that sense of responsibility. Now, what about, okay, so we have one semantic feature, which is metaphor. We have one syntactic feature, which is active voice. What about lexicology? There's one more. There's the lexical feature. I'll give you that. There's two lexical features. Hereby swear. What's that? Okay, what about hereby? We'll focus on that. Hereby. Would you say hereby in everyday conversation? You wouldn't, right? So what do we call it? Yeah, exactly. It's elevated Lexus. Or if you want to be more specific, you can say it's an adverb. And you can say like it's similar to like what you're using in a legal context, typically used in legal settings. So hereby, like this idea of like hereby, like this word hereby, you use it in like legal documents or when you're making an oath in like a court, for example. So using like this elevated lexeme here, this adverb hereby, what does it do? It basically like equates um like blood donation to it equates the seriousness of blood donation to that of a legal responsibility or a legal duty. And that's something you can link to any SLB you want. Cognitive, inspire, intent, whatever. That's another feature. That's another male language term you can add this here. It's a really good feature. You'll see that when it comes to ACs, there's certain clusters of features that you can find throughout a text. And the best features, they're usually located in the same line or the same cluster. That's the pattern you'll see if you do a lot of text. Line 14 of community and country. So community and country, what are those? So it's also the C. It's a semantic feature. It's a semantic feature. Not compounding, but like you're sort of getting close in a way. It's also the CO, CRL, double L. Yeah, collocations. So community and country is a collocation. And you can say like the nouns community and country, they evoke like connotations or they harbor connotations uh, of unity and like togetherness. And that in turn um, appeals like to Australian values, you know, uh, of mateship or camaraderie. And that can be like the cultural context. Really good feature. To give what I can, as often as I can, even when I don't feel like it or if I'm scared. Uh, forgive experiences, don't take them, hold me to my word. Yeah, yeah. So line 20 and 22, to give hope, to give joy, give second chances, even 23 as well, to give life. So we have more abstract nouns here. Hope, joy, second chances, life. And they're written in what structure? Yeah, parallelism. Yeah, exactly. Do I promise to be a blood donor? Bloody yes, I do. Yeah. So everything else is pretty straightforward. Line 26, 28, 30. We have more active voice here. And you can link to the same effect that we were talking about earlier here. Yeah. Now the last line is pretty good. The last line is actually really good. So what do you think is a feature here? What do you think is a feature in line 32? Yes, this will be a sentence fragment. Yeah. So to the person who asked, yeah, this is a sentence fragment. All these are sentence fragments. But line 32, what's our feature here? Sorry. What's our feature here? Yeah, exactly. I kind of highlighted it earlier, but yeah, it's the first person plural pronoun. We. So, what do you guys think that does? How would you describe the effect of using a first person plural pronoun? So one of you said it creates inclusivity, sense of community. Yeah, that's a good one. You can even say like by saying by using a first person plural pronoun we, they're sort of like enjoining or uniting Australians in a collective resolve. Uh like of like helping those, of aiding those um like who require blood donations. And I can be linked to like the idea of like solidarity, the purpose of solidarity. Yeah, appealing to national identity. Yeah, you can say that as well. Yeah. You can even link to the cultural context as well. Like values of mateship, uh, unity, camaraderie, uh, egalitarianism as well. Yeah, you can say that as well. That's fine. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So this text has so many good features. In your AC, you really only need five good features for your motive paragraphs. The motive paragraph for your AC. So this one here, this is like the make or break. So make or break paragraph for your AC. So if you ace this, then your entire AC is going to be really, really good. And vice versa. So yeah, you only need four or five features per paragraph, and we definitely have more than five features here. So yeah, very, very good text, full of really, really good features. So hopefully I give you guys a good idea as to like how to analyze this text and how to unpack all the features. But yeah, I think we might end it there because we are like 20 something minutes over time. But um, looking ahead, so in terms of homework, I recommend you guys don't go through these things. But looking ahead, we're going to do some revision for man language. So I'll go through each of the subsystems in detail, show you guys how to actually analyze each man language term, go in depth with the stylistic effect and the immediate effect for each man language. So you're all like really, really confident with man language going into year 12. We'll do a bunch of practice texts. So this is like all that exposure. So making sure you have like a lot of exposure to a variety of texts uh, before your first SAC, before the exam as well. And I'll introduce you guys to Unit 3, which is all about language variation and purpose. So those are some things we're going to do looking ahead. But that's the end of this lesson. So do we have any questions at all? Yeah, can a copy of the edited document be accessed afterwards? Yeah, so once you officially enroll, I'll give you access to all the resources, including this annotated document, all the recordings, and all the practice materials. You'll have all of that once you officially enroll. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, one more thing for your homework as well. Just let me know, like send me a message uh if you'd like to confirm your enrollment. If you'd like to continue and like join next week as well, just let me know, send me a message and I'll add you to a list and then we'll go from there. So yeah, that's just one thing you want to do after this lesson as well. But yeah, if you have any questions at all, you're more than welcome to stay back. If not, you're free to go, and I'll see you guys next week.